I'm afraid we have to let you go, effective immediately. Your access to the servers has already been revoked.
Right, I understand the situation. But pulling the funding now puts us in a difficult position. Look, I'll make sure the project is completed as promised.
I understand that may be difficult to hear, Malcolm, but the decision is final. We're terminating the contract effective immediately due to budget restructuring.
Malcolm Reed heard the smile in his own voice before he felt the dread. The call came late. Too late for good news. The city outside his apartment window smeared into lines of yellow and red by the rain. He had been rehearsing gratitude in his head, the kind you offer when a door finally opens. 12 months, 6 figures, the deal that would let him breathe. Malcolm, the voice said, polished and distant. We've had some conversations. Malcolm leaned against the counter, barefoot on cold tile. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor laughed. He pictured the pitch room again, the nods, the praise, the way the client's eyes had lingered on him just a second too long before sliding away. Conversations about what? Malcolm asked. There was a pause, a careful one, the kind people use when they believe they were being reasonable. About fit, the man said, about how our customers might respond. The word fit echoed. Malcolm's chest tightened. He stared at his reflection in the dark window, at his own face floating there like a question no one wanted to answer. I've already started the work, Malcolm said quietly. You approved the scope. Yes, the voice replied. Then, softer, final. But you're not the right face of this project. The line went dead. Malcolm stood there, phone pressed to his ear, rain tapping harder now, like a countdown. On the counter, his laptop screen glowed with the open contract, unsigned, blinking, waiting. He didn't know yet who else had been on that call. He didn't know how much power they had. All he knew was that something had just been taken from him, and the silence afterward felt deliberate. Malcolm Reed watched the cursor blink at the end of the proposal, a tiny pulse of light in the dim co-working office. Midnight glass reflected his face back at him, tired eyes, jaw tight, the faint crease between his brows that came from years of being careful with his tone. The deal was perfect. 12 months. 6 figures. A national rebrand for Helix Solutions. This was the break that turned surviving into breathing. His phone vibrated. Unknown caller. He answered, already smiling. This is Malcolm. A pause. Breathing on the other end. Then a man's voice, smooth and clipped. Malcolm, this is Greg Whitman. We spoke yesterday. Yes, sir, Malcolm said. He straightened in his chair. I was just sending over the final. We need to talk. Whitman cut in. Papers rustled. There's been a change. Malcolm's fingers hovered above the keyboard. Okay. Another pause. Longer. I reviewed your portfolio again. Impressive work. Really. The word really landed wrong, heavy with something unspoken. But the board had concerns. What kind of concerns? Malcolm asked. Well, Whitman said, lowering his voice, they're worried about optics, about fit. Malcolm's smile froze. Fit for the brand. For the client-facing role, Whitman replied, our customers expect a certain familiarity. Silence filled the office, broken by a distant siren and the hum of the vac. Malcolm pictured the pitch meeting, the way Whitman's eyes had flicked to his skin before settling on the slides. I've led client-facing campaigns before, Malcolm said. You said that was a strength. Whitman sighed, as if burdened. I did, but after some discussion, we've decided to go in a different direction. Different how? Malcolm asked. We're canceling the contract, Whitman said, effective immediately. The words hit like a drop glass, sharp and final. Malcolm swallowed. Is there an issue with the work? I can adjust scope, timelines. It's not about the work, Whitman interrupted. This isn't personal. Malcolm laughed once, a sound without humor. Then what is it? Another breath. Then the knife. You're not the right face of this project. The line went dead. Malcolm stayed at the phone, his reflection warped in the black screen. The cursor still blinked, patient, mocking. Around him, the office felt suddenly smaller, airless. He thought of the student loans he deferred, the rent due Friday, His mother's voice telling him to keep pushing, to be excellent so they couldn't say no. Outside, rain began to tap against the windows, light at first, then harder. Malcolm closed his laptop slowly. Somewhere across the city, a boardroom had decided he didn't belong. And in the quiet that followed, his biggest deal vanished, leaving a question he couldn't shake. What would it cost him to fight back? Malcolm woke to the sound of his inbox refreshing. He hadn't meant to sleep on the couch, laptop balanced on his chest, but exhaustion had won sometime near dawn. The first thing he saw was Helix Solutions' logo glowing at the top of his screen. HR. Subject line, regarding your inquiry. He opened it. Dear Malcolm, the email began. Thank you for reaching out. After internal review, we can confirm that the decision to discontinue proposed engagement was made in accordance with company policy. We wish you success in your future endeavors. That was it. Malcolm exhaled through his nose. Company policy, he muttered, rereading the line like it might change if he stared long enough. He typed back immediately. Can you clarify which policy applies? I received verbal approval and began work in good faith. The reply came 2 hours later. We are unable to provide further details. Malcolm picked up his phone and called a number in Whitman's signature. It rang until voicemail. Greg, it's Malcolm Reed, he said, keeping his voice even. I just want to understand what changed. Please call me back. He hung up and stared at the wall, jaw clenched. The room smelled like cold coffee and rain-soaked concrete drifting in through the cracked window. By noon, he'd sent 3 emails. By 1, his hands were shaking. He tried a different angle. Sarah Klein, the project manager from the pitch meeting, the one who had praised his strategy and asked for his availability twice. She answered on the 3rd ring. Malcolm. Hey, he said, relief flickering. I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to ask, do you know what happened? There was a pause. He could hear typing, the clink of a spoon against a mug. I'm not supposed to talk about internal decisions, she said carefully. I understand, Malcolm replied. I just need to know if there was a problem with my work. Another pause. Longer. No, she said quietly. Your work was solid. Then why? Malcolm, she interrupted, lowering her voice. I really can't. He swallowed. Did someone say something about me? Silence. That's your answer, Malcolm said. She sighed. I'm sorry. Truly. But you know how these things go. Actually, Malcolm said, heat creeping into his chest. I don't. The line went dead. He stared at the phone, pulse pounding. Around him, the city moved on. Sirens, footsteps, life continuing as if nothing had been taken. He opened LinkedIn, forcing himself back into motion, back into survival. An hour later, his phone buzzed again. A text from a smaller client in Chicago. Hey man, quick heads up. Heard you had some trouble with Helix. Everything okay? Malcolm's fingers hovered. Trouble? That's what it was already becoming. A story stripped of course. They canceled without explanation. He typed, I'm handling it. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. By evening, the polite words had piled up into a wall. HR emails, auto-replies, smiles that didn't reach voices. No one said the word race. No one had to. It lived in the pauses, the lowered tones, the way conversations ended too quickly. Malcolm opened the contract again. Still unsigned, still blinking. He closed it and leaned back, rubbing his eyes. They hadn't yelled. They hadn't threatened. They had simply closed the door and locked it while telling him it wasn't personal. And that, Malcolm realized, was how it always worked. Malcolm didn't tell his mother right away. He let 3 days pass, then 4, filling the silence with smaller lies. Work's busy. Things are moving. I'll visit soon. Each night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the call with Greg Whitman until the words lost shape and became feeling instead. Tight, heavy, wrong. On the 5th day, his mother called him. You sound tired, she said after hello. You eating? Yes, Malcolm lied. Malcolm. He closed his eyes. They canceled the contract. Silence hummed through the line, broken by the faint sound of a television in the background. Canceled how? Just canceled. After they said yes. Yes. And they didn't say why. They said it was about fit. His mother exhaled slowly. That's it. Malcolm asked, a sharp edge slipping into his voice. That's all you're gonna say? I'm thinking, she replied, because I've heard that word before. He sat up, rubbing his face. I did everything right. I know, she said. That's not the part that scares me. What scares you, then? That you'll try to pretend this didn't hurt you, she said gently. Or worse, you'll think it's your fault. Malcolm swallowed. I just want to move on. She hesitated. Sometimes moving on is what they're counting on. After the call, Malcolm stared at the wall until the light shifted. Her words stayed with him, uncomfortable, persistent. That evening, he met his best friend Jamal at a bar near Union Square. The place smelled like citrus cleaner and old wood, TVs murmuring above half-filled glasses. Jamal listened without interrupting, eyes darkening with each detail. So they ice you out, Jamal said finally. Clean, quiet, professional, Malcolm replied. Very. Jamal shook his head. You gonna let it go? I don't know what else to do. You could talk about it. And get blacklisted. Malcolm snapped. You know how fast that happens. Jamal leaned forward. You also know how fast silence spreads. Malcolm looked away. Around them, people laughed, ordered drinks, lived lives untouched by boardrooms in coded language. I can't afford to be a problem, he said. You already are, Jamal replied softly. You just didn't choose it. The bartender slid over another glass. Malcolm didn't touch it. The next morning, an email waited for him from a startup he'd been courting for weeks. Hey, Malcolm. It read, We've decided to pause on outside consultants for now. Best of luck. Pause. Best of luck. He stared at the screen, a chill creeping in. This was how it happened. Not with one door closing, but with others quietly following. By afternoon, his chest felt tight, breath shallow. He went for a walk, letting the noise of the city ground him. Construction clanged. A street preacher shouted about salvation. Life pressing from all sides, indifferent. Back in his apartment, Malcolm opened a voice memo app. Just in case, he whispered, thumb hovering. He began to speak. He described the pitch meeting, the praise, the approval, Whitman's tone on the phone, the word fit. He spoke carefully at first, then faster, the dam cracking. I don't know if this matters, he said into the phone, but I know what it felt like, and I know I'm not the only one. When he finished, his hands were trembling. He saved the file and backed it up twice. That night, he dreamed he was standing in a glass room, people circling outside, pointing. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. He woke with his heart racing. In the dark, Malcolm sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees. Staying quiet meant survival. Maybe. Speaking up meant risk. Definitely. He knew the math. He'd been taught it early. But as he thought of the canceled emails, the vanished replies, the way Sarah's voice had dropped to a whisper, something hardened inside him. Silence, he realized, had a cost too, and he was already paying it. Malcolm spread the documents across his kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. Printed emails, calendar invites, his annotated pitch deck, still marked with Helix's internal feedback. He lined them up carefully, dates and times visible, patterns emerging the longer he looked. Approval, praise, verbal green lights. Then, nothing. The shift wasn't subtle. It was surgical. He opened his laptop and scrolled through the recording of the pitch meeting, headphones pressed tight. Whitman's voice came through clear. Exactly what we're looking for, Whitman had said. Fresh, confident, client ready. Malcolm paused the audio, jaw tightening. Client ready. Until he wasn't. His phone rang. Jamal, you still thinking about it? Jamal asked. I'm organizing, Malcolm replied. Just facts. That's how it starts. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. I don't want noise. I want proof. Then talk to someone who knows how this works, Jamal said. A lawyer. 2 hours later, Malcolm sat in a narrow office that smelled like old books and coffee. Denise Harper, civil rights attorney, scanned his documents with practiced speed. She didn't interrupt. She didn't nod. She just read. Finally, she looked up. They never said anything explicit. No, Malcolm said. They were careful. Denise sighed. That's a problem. Discrimination today doesn't wear sign. It wears a suit. So I don't have a case, Malcolm said. I didn't say that, she replied. I said it's hard. Without written proof tying the decision directly to race, corporations hide behind discretion. Malcolm laughed bitterly. So if they're polite enough, they are untouchable. Legally, Denise said. Often, yes. He stared at the table. Then what am I supposed to do? She hesitated. There's law, she said slowly, and there's accountability. They don't always overlap. On his way out, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw what happened with Helix. I went through something similar last year. If you want to talk. Malcolm's breath caught. He typed back. Who is this? A friend of a friend. Also freelance. Also black. They met that evening at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn. The man introduced himself as Andre, eyes tired but alert. They said my energy wasn't right, Andre said, stirring his coffee. 3 weeks after approval. Malcolm nodded. Fit. Optics. Familiarity. Andre laughed without humor. They used the same words everywhere. How many others? Malcolm asked. Andre shrugged. Enough that I stopped thinking it was coincidence. Later that night, Malcolm sat on his couch scrolling through his contacts. One name stood out. Elena Ruiz, a journalist he collaborated with years ago on a nonprofit campaign. He hesitated, then called. Elena, he said when she answered. I might have a story. She listened without interrupting, the way good journalists did. Do you have documentation? She asked. Yes. And are you prepared for pushback? Malcolm closed his eyes. He pictured the unsigned contract, the quiet emails, his mother's voice. Sometimes moving on is what they're counting on. I don't want revenge, he said. I just want the truth visible. Elena exhaled. That might cost you. I know, Malcolm replied, but hiding already has. When the call ended, Malcolm looked around his apartment. Small, cluttered, honest. He gathered the papers back into a folder, labeling it carefully. Helix. He didn't know yet what form justice would take. He only knew that silence was no longer neutral, and whatever came next, he would not face it empty-handed. Malcolm sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Careful, measured, professional. Facts first, emotion second. He knew the internet didn't care about nuance, but the truth still mattered. Fred start, 1/10. He typed, last week, my largest client canceled my contract suddenly. No performance issues. No errors. Just fit. Here's what happened. He uploaded emails, meeting notes, the recording of Whitman's words, every timestamp intact. With each attachment, he felt a jolt. Not fear, exactly, but adrenaline. He had chosen this path, and yet the weight of exposure settled like a stone in his chest. Notifications began almost immediately. Likes, retweets, supportive comments. This is unacceptable. I've seen the same pattern. Stay strong. But there were also whispers and coded hostility. Maybe you just misunderstood corporate culture. Sounds like a risk-averse company decision. Malcolm scrolled past them without flinching, heart racing. Somewhere along the line, the story had already grown beyond him. His phone rang. Elena, they're already calling us, she said. Local outlet wants a statement. National wants interviews next week. I'm ready, Malcolm replied. He wasn't sure if he truly was. The email from HR had made him feel powerless. Now, his name and story were visible to anyone willing to listen. That visibility carried danger and vindication in equal measure. Over the next few days, his life split in two. One part interviews, calls, thread updates. The other part, silent dread. Helix's official response was sterile, corporate, legalistic. Helix Solutions strongly denies any wrongdoing. Decisions regarding engagements are made with the company's best interests in mind. Malcolm read it over and over. It didn't address him. It didn't acknowledge the pattern. It didn't care. During one televised segment, a panelist questioned his credibility. "Are you sure there isn't another reason for this decision?" "Yes," Malcolm said, voice steady. "I am sure, and I have proof." The camera caught his expression, calm, controlled, but burning underneath. By the end of the week, he had thousands following his thread, journalists calling, even competitors sending private messages of support. But each victory was measured by anxiety. Potential clients hesitated, HR departments watched, and Whitman remained untouchable, or so it seemed. Sitting back that night, Malcolm stared at his laptop. The city lights reflected in the dark screen, flickering like distant stars. He had made himself visible. He had made them accountable. But exposure was only the first step. The fight was just beginning, and he would have to stay ready. Malcolm's phone vibrated with an unfamiliar number. He answered cautiously. "Malcolm Reed," a firm voice asked. "Yes," he said. "This is Carter and Mills, representing Helix Solutions. Cease and desist. You are not authorized to share confidential communications. Remove all public posts immediately." Malcolm felt the blood drain from his face. He had anticipated resistance, but the cold, legalistic tone made it real. "I'm not sharing anything false," Malcolm said evenly. "All documentation I posted is factual. I've kept everything accurate." The line went silent for a beat. "You are exposing proprietary information. Consider this your formal notice." Click. He dropped the phone onto the couch and exhaled slowly. Fear was crawling up his spine, but so was anger. The next morning, another message arrived. A potential client in Chicago. "We've decided to postpone our project with your firm." Malcolm read it twice. Retaliation didn't always come with threats. Sometimes it came quietly in canceled contracts, subtle signals, veiled concerns. Jamal came over that afternoon, eyes scanning the room cluttered with papers and laptops. "So, they are trying to scare me into silence," Malcolm said. "And it's working for some people." "Some people," Jamal prompted. "Other freelancers," Malcolm admitted. "I reached out. Several have had the same thing happen. Same words, same pauses, fit, upticks, familiarity." Jamal leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "Then this isn't just about you. It's about a system, and it's why you can't back down." Malcolm stared at the ceiling. He had thought speaking out would be liberating. Instead, he felt exposed. Each day, he navigated a minefield, retaliation disguised as normal business. That evening, Andre called. "They're emailing my clients," subtly suggesting caution. "I've already lost one gig." Malcolm's chest tightened. "It's the same everywhere." "I know," Andre said. "But you're not alone." Malcolm exhaled, feeling a small spark of solidarity. Despite the cost, he realized collective awareness was stronger than corporate intimidation. They spent hours mapping experiences, documenting patterns, connecting dots. Stories intertwined, forming a quiet coalition, a network of freelancers who had been systematically sidelined, silenced, or replaced. As night fell, Malcolm sat by his window, watching streetlight shimmer on wet pavement. He thought of his mother's warning. Sometimes staying quiet is what they want. Sometimes speaking up comes with price. He also thought of the alternative. Doing nothing meant letting the pattern continue, letting silence carry their authority forward. With a deep breath, he opened his laptop. The social media thread had grown. Comments and messages of support poured in. Every story, every post, every shared experience pushed back against the quiet violence of corporate erasure. He typed, "This isn't just about one contract. This is about accountability. I will not be silenced." Outside, rain tapped steadily against the window. Inside, Malcolm felt both the weight of retaliation and the first hint of defiance that refused to be extinguished. He was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. Malcolm woke to an unexpected email flagged as urgent. The subject line read, "Anonymous tip, Helix internal memo." His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a screenshot of an internal email chain from Helix executives discussing Malcolm's contract. Phrases like concerned about client perception and we need someone more familiar jumped off the screen. The words were coded but unmistakable. He called Elena immediately. This could change everything, he said. Elena's voice was cautious. We'll need verification, sources, context. But yes, this could shift the narrative. Malcolm shared the memo with Andre and Jamal. They scrolled through, reading every line multiple times, absorbing the quiet evidence of deliberate bias. They knew, Andre said finally. They didn't stumble into it. They planned it. Malcolm felt a cold surge of vindication, but it was tempered by exhaustion. Vindication meant exposure. Exposure meant scrutiny, and scrutiny meant more retaliation. In the following days, news outlets picked up the story. Broadcast segments ran carefully edited clips of Malcolm explaining the timeline. Panel discussions debated corporate ethics and systemic racism in client-facing industries. Meanwhile, Helix executives scrambled internally. Board meetings were tense. Emails leaked to staff about damage control and public perception. Conversations once polite and distant now crackled with anxiety. Malcolm observed it from his apartment, watching city lights flicker over rain-slicked streets. Each message he received from supporters and other black freelancers reinforced one truth. The system could bend, even if slowly. Jamal visited one evening, handing Malcolm a coffee. You see it? He asked. Cracks in the glass. Malcolm nodded. They are starting to show, but we need to be careful. Systems heal slowly, even after exposure. Yeah, Jamal said, sipping. And the ones who did this, they feel the cracks too. Can you see it? Malcolm leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The tension of weeks, the fear, the anger, the relentless anxiety was still there. But for the first time, he recognized possibility. Power was shifting, however gradually, and truth was carving its way into spaces that had long ignored it. In quiet moments, Malcolm documented everything. Every conversation, every public reaction, every internal leak. Each record felt like a piece of armor. He also realized something else. This fight wasn't only for him. It was for the freelancers who would come after him, for those who were already silenced, for every young professional forced to navigate the delicate terrain of systemic bias. And as Helix wobbled under the pressure of public scrutiny, Malcolm finally allowed himself a small, private acknowledgement. Persistence, truth, and careful exposure could leave even the most fortified systems vulnerable. Outside, rain fell softly, washing the streets. Inside, Malcolm felt a cautious spark of hope, tempered by the knowledge that real change required endurance, vigilance, and courage. The cracks were visible now, and they would widen. The morning air felt unusually heavy as Malcolm walked into the courthouse. His folder, thick with emails, recordings, and notes, rested firmly under his arm. The city buzzed around him, indifferent, as if life carried on despite every injustice exposed inside this building. Inside, the proceedings moved deliberately, slowly. Helix Solutions was facing multiple lawsuits, one from Malcolm, others from former employees who had come forward anonymously, and the mounting public pressure had prompted an internal review. Lawyers in dark suits shuffled papers, whispered in corners, and glanced warily at each other. Malcolm sat in the front row, nerves coiled tight, and listened as Greg Whitman's testimony began. Whitman's polished demeanor faltered under questioning. We considered various factors in evaluating Mr. Reed's fit, he said carefully, avoiding the word race. But those factors, the opposing counsel pressed, refer to your internal perception of the client's preferences. Did Mr. Reed's race influence that perception? Whitman hesitated. His silence was deafening. Outside the courtroom, journalists jotted notes, cameras flashed, and social media buzzed with the unfolding events. For the first time since that late-night call, the power that had seemed untouchable was visibly shifting. Later, in a conference room, Malcolm met with his attorney. The evidence is clear, she said. They misrepresented the reason for cancellation. Whitman's statements contradict internal emails. Investors are worried. Leadership is being pressured. Malcolm exhaled, the weight in his chest lightening just a fraction. Consequences were taking shape. Not instantaneous justice, not the dramatic confrontation he had imagined in his darkest nights, but tangible, undeniable accountability. Still, the victory was bittersweet. Potential clients had backed out during the public saga. His finances had been strained, and the stress had left marks on his health. Every interview, every post, every call had exacted a toll. Yet amidst the costs, there was clarity. Speaking up had mattered. Resistance had mattered. Truth had carved cracks in a system built to protect the powerful and silence those like him. Malcolm left the courthouse later that day into the cold evening, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. Helix's CEO had announced resignations. Whitman had been placed on leave pending review. Slowly, the company was facing the fallout it had long ignored. Malcolm's phone buzzed with a message from Andre. They are finally hearing the stories. We made it count. Malcolm stared at the screen, thinking of the months of anxiety, lost opportunities, and relentless pressure. Poetic justice had arrived, not with vengeance, but with exposure and accountability. The night air was crisp. Malcolm inhaled deeply, letting it fill his lungs. The battle was won in part, but he knew the journey of resilience would continue. He was scarred, yes, but unbroken, and he had claimed the space they had tried to deny him. Months had passed since Helix Solutions' leadership began to crumble under scrutiny. Malcolm sat in his new home office, a sunlit corner apartment with shelves crowded by books, plants, and awards from smaller campaigns he had built from scratch. The silence of his apartment felt different now, earned, not imposed. His phone buzzed. A new client inquiry, a national startup looking to launch a branding campaign. They mentioned his name specifically. We followed your work and want you on this project. You'll lead it from start to finish. Malcolm smiled faintly. This was the acknowledgement he had longed for, not just approval, but recognition that his talent and professionalism mattered. Not just for the project, but as a statement. He was seen, he was valued. Yet, victory was never without shadows. The months of public scrutiny had taken a toll. Trust fractured, opportunities lost, and late nights spent replaying Whitman's words in his mind. He sometimes woke in the middle of the night, heart racing, as if the call canceling his biggest deal still echoed. One afternoon, he met Jamal for coffee. The barista greeted him by name, a small but grounding reminder that life had moved forward. "You okay?" Jamal asked, watching Malcolm stir his coffee slowly. "I am," Malcolm said. "Better, but it's not the same. It won't ever be the same." "That's okay," Jamal replied. "You learned, you fought, and now you can help others." Malcolm nodded. He had already started mentoring younger black freelancers, sharing strategies for navigating bias, documenting experiences, and finding solidarity. Exposure had been painful, but it had also created a network of resilience. In the quiet of his office that evening, he opened a fresh document for the new campaign. He thought of the cancelled Helix contract, of Whitman's final words, "You're not the right face of this project." Malcolm typed the first lines with deliberate care, each word a reclamation of space once denied. He paused, leaning back, looking at the city skyline through the window. The past lingered. Yes, but it no longer defined him. Outside, the streets shimmered with wet reflections from a passing rain. Malcolm closed his eyes briefly and smiled. He had lost battles, felt betrayal, faced retaliation, but he had also endured. He had spoken truth to power, and in the process, forged a version of success no one could revoke. The phone buzzed again, a colleague from another state, a potential client, another opportunity. Malcolm picked it up. His voice was calm, steady, certain. "Yes, I'm available. Let's start." And in that moment, after months of silence, Malcolm felt a quiet triumph. Not the roar of revenge, not the flash of vindication, but the enduring strength of a life reclaimed on his own terms. The story ended not with fireworks, but with a subtle, steadfast pulse of resilience. Malcolm had survived, and now he thrived.